The story I am about to tell today is an event that took place in two forested areas. It began when the protagonist, a botanist, had the opportunity to explore these forests together with his team. Beyond the rare plant species and ancient artifacts, which are difficult to find in ordinary areas, they also had to face an incredibly mysterious experience, something that could be described as a true horror for the entire group. This story is Tale from the Woods. Before we dive into our scary story, we would like to ask everyone to like and subscribe to support us in continuing to bring you more terrifying tales in the future. The first story of the eerie experiences in the forest takes us back to around the year 1989, approximately 35 years ago. At that time, forest trekking was vastly different from what it is today. For the protagonist, trekking back then wasn't merely a leisurely walk or an adventurous journey. It was a mission to study various plants, including rare trees and vegetation, or even long-forgotten Buddha footprints. During the time Matt was ordained as a monk, he came across an old manuscript written by his mentor. The manuscript was titled The Buddha Footprints of Yonic Kingdom. It documented that 15 years prior, a Buddha footprint had been discovered on a certain mountain. This mountain was steep and challenging to climb, with no convenient paths. Nowadays, the area has been developed with concrete stairs and shops lining the route. However, back when the events unfolded, there were no such facilities. The villagers, driven by faith, had carved steps into the soil, creating a pathway that, while not very stable, made the climb more manageable. In some sections, wooden resting platforms were placed for travelers to sit and take a break along the way. The story began when Matt and 3 of his friends, making a group of 4, decided to embark on a journey to pay homage to the Buddha footprints of Yonic Kingdom. On the day they planned to go, it took until evening for everyone to gather, and by the time they were ready, it was already nightfall. Despite this, they decided to begin their ascent immediately. Having years of experience in trekking, the group, including Matt, felt little worry about the journey ahead. Once assembled, they checked their essential equipment, such as tents, compasses, lanterns, and survival gear, to ensure they were well prepared for camping atop the mountain. Each member also carried a notebook and an old-fashioned camera to document and photograph the Buddha footprints as a keepsake. Before starting their climb, Matt approached an elderly villager and asked, "If we climb up now, will we get lost?" The elderly woman replied, "No, young man, you won't get lost. Just keep walking and you'll eventually reach the top. But it's quite far. You might be walking until dawn before you make it. So, better hurry and start your climb." With the elderly woman's advice in mind, the group mentally prepared themselves for a long journey. They began their trek at around 8 p.m., using a method of counting steps to keep themselves entertained and distracted from the fatigue. They started counting from the first step they could identify and encouraged one another with the thought that they'd reach their destination soon. As they walked, they conversed, occasionally stopping to observe unusual plants they encountered along the way. One of the group members diligently recorded these observations in his small notebook. The unexpected occurred when Youth, one of Matt's friends, suddenly tripped and fell to the side of the path. In the process, his foot struck a termite mound, breaking it in half. Coincidentally, they had just counted their steps to 131 at that point. Consequently, the group decided to name that spot Hill 131. Youth, who had fallen, remained still for a moment before slowly and clumsily getting back on his feet. However, as he was rising, there was a moment when he glanced through his legs at the termite mound. When he lifted his head again, his expression had changed. He looked deeply unsettled. He briefly said to his friends, I saw it. Matt, puzzled by Yutha's words, asked, what did you see? Don't joke around like this. But instead of answering, Yuth acted strangely and uttered, help me, I can't breathe. He then began to unbutton his shirt in distress. Seeing his friend's behavior, Matt still didn't believe him and said, hey, stop messing around. We still have a long way to go, you know. The other two friends, noticing that something was wrong, called Matt over to stand in a line with them. They suggested they all bend down together and look through their legs at the termite mound to see what Yuth had seen. Matt was typically skeptical about supernatural matters. Having been a monk for a long time, he carried many protective amulets, sacred tattoos, and blessings from his teachers. Confident that he wouldn't see anything, he reluctantly agreed to do as his friends suggested for the sake of solidarity. As they stood in a line, Yuth collapsed to the ground, crying and repeatedly muttering, hot! It's so hot! Help me! Matt and the others counted to 3 and bent down to look through their legs. However, when Matt counted to 2, he unexpectedly slipped and fell, preventing him from looking. The other two friends, who managed to look, froze in shock at what they saw. They stood up, their faces pale, and exclaimed in trembling voices, "Oh no, I'm terrified." Soon after, they began to experience the same symptoms as Yuth, crying, saying it was unbearably hot, gasping for air, and repeatedly crying out for help. Seeing this, Matt grabbed hold of his friends and decided to start chanting the prayers he had learned during his time as a monk. As he did so, the sacred tattoos and oil marks on his skin began to shimmer faintly, as if responding to the situation. This was when Matt realized that something supernatural was undoubtedly at play. Determined to see for himself, Matt thought, "Let me see it clearly. If I bend down and look, let me see what my friends saw." Resolutely, he bent down and looked through his legs. What Matt saw chilled him to the bone. Emerging from the termite mound was the upper half of a man's body. The lower half was missing, leaving only intestines and internal organs dangling and swaying as they touched the ground. In the area where the two friends had been standing, there was an elderly woman dressed in white with short bobbed hair. She appeared to be over 80 years old and was perched on the shoulders of one of his friends. Saliva dripped from her mouth onto his friend's head, soaking his hair. When Matt turned his gaze to the third friend, he saw a child wearing a traditional Thai loincloth, Jongkraben, clinging tightly to his friend's leg as if refusing to let him go. Despite all this, Matt was the only one who did not feel any physical discomfort. However, the sight of these entities made him exclaim loudly, "I've seen it now." The affected friends continued crying out for help, and one by one, they collapsed to the ground. Matt, realizing he had to take control of the situation, instructed his friends to press their palms together and recite the sacred prayers he had learned from his teachers. Matt led the chanting, his voice steady and firm. When the prayers were completed, an ear-piercing scream echoed through the forest, followed by an inexplicable strong wind that uprooted some of the trees nearby. Matt turned to his friends and said with determination, "Repeat this short mantra. It's just 5 words. After that, hold your breath and run up to the top. Don't look back at me. Just run as fast as you can. I'll handle the rest." His friends nodded, and after chanting the mantra together, they took off running as if their lives depended on it. Matt remained behind, standing alone. He picked up a tree branch and used it to perform a ritual to ward off the unseen entities and prevent them from noticing him. As he climbed the mountain, he continued performing these rituals. 2 hours later, Matt finally reached the open plateau at the top of the mountain, where his friends were already waiting for him. At that moment, Matt's friends started sharing their experiences of what they had encountered on their way up. Each person had seen something different. One friend mentioned, "While I was running up, I saw small stones, like gravel, rolling uphill from below." Another friend said, "I saw a shadow of something following me the entire way. However, the one thing everyone heard was the same, a voice trailing behind them, saying, 'Where are you going? Take me with you.'" After reaching the mountain's summit, the group took a moment to collect themselves before exploring the area in search of the Buddha's footprint. Once they found what they were looking for, everyone respectfully paid homage to it. Then, they carefully followed the proper steps outlined by the Department of Fine Arts to trace the Buddha's footprint, ensuring they caused no harm to it. They also recorded detailed notes about its history, planning to submit their findings to the Department of Fine Arts later. Once their work was done, they gathered to decide their next move. They debated whether to descend the mountain and camp at the base or spend the night at the summit, which seemed safer. Considering the potential dangers they might face on the way back, they ultimately agreed to stay at the summit. That night, all of them had dreams of a similar nature. They saw a group of spirits residing on Hill 131. The spirits pleaded earnestly for merit, saying, "No one has noticed us in a long time. Please share some merit with us." When the group asked how they could help, the spirits replied unanimously, "Offer sweet and savory food in small leaf cups, light 16 incense sticks, and place them where you saw us." The next morning, after waking up, everyone gathered to discuss their dreams. Matt asked for their opinions on whether they should take the same route back or choose another path. The group unanimously decided to take a different route, fearing another encounter with the strange occurrences on Hill 131. After successfully descending the mountain, they went to a nearby village to buy offerings as guided by their dreams. They prepared sweet and savory food in leaf cups, returned to Hill 131, and performed the rituals, placing the offerings where they had seen the spirits. They recited chants to dedicate merit to the spirits and promised, "As long as we're alive and able, we'll return here to pay our respects every year." Matt mentioned that today, the area has become much more developed and is vastly different from before. What was once a mysterious and eerie place has now transformed into a significant site visited by many worshippers. This marked the first encounter the group had in the forest. The story of their second forest adventure took place in a southern forest. For this expedition, Matt's group planned to spend 15 days traversing the forest to reach the other side. The journey was through animal trails, and the primary goal was to map the area. This forest also bordered a neighboring country. Matt's group of 38 included guides, porters, and a military team assisting with navigation. The group also included Matt and fellow botanists. On the third day of the expedition, they entered a tropical rainforest with geography reminiscent of ancient forests. These forests were home to rare plant species not found elsewhere. That night, the group camped near a cliff, about 20 meters to their right. In front of them was a curious three-pronged trail, while to the left was the path they had climbed earlier that evening using ropes near a waterfall. In this area, they found a unique tree called Rudraksh, commonly known as the Tears of Shiva. This tree is rare and highly valued by collectors of sacred items. Many believe that the Rudraksh tree exists only in India, but it also grows in Thailand. The forest they were in contained a river linked to the Himalayan mountain range, the tree's origin. Discovering the Rudraksh tree in Thailand's southern forests added excitement to their expedition. For Matt and his fellow botanists, it wasn't just about finding a rare plant. It also revealed a deeper connection between nature across regions. This discovery highlighted the ancient bond between Himalayan and Thai ecosystems, underscoring the significance of preserving such natural treasures. On the third night, all 38 members of the group hung their hammocks in a designated area. Security personnel spread out around the camp to ensure safety, keeping bonfires burning brightly throughout the night. The rules for staying in the forest were simple. If you see or hear anything unusual, don't comment or react immediately. Keep it to yourself until later. Another crucial rule was that the fire must never go out, so guards rotated shifts to maintain it continuously. Late at night, as the wristwatch signaled that it had reached 2 a.m., an unexpected sound pierced through the stillness of the forest, startling everyone out of their slumber. The sound came from the direction of the waterfall on the left-hand side, the same one Matt and his group had climbed using ropes earlier. It was a peculiar sound, resembling the rhythmic beating of a gong, echoing in intervals of 3 strikes, then repeating continuously, growing louder and more unnerving. As the sound reverberated through the forest, everyone awoke and, almost in unison, switched on their flashlights. They directed the beams of light toward the source of the mysterious noise. What their eyes met caused their hearts to race uncontrollably. Emerging from the darkness along the path leading up from the waterfall was a procession of people, moving in an orderly line. The figures appeared to be from the Dvaravati era, and leading the procession was a woman seated on a palanquin carried by about 20 men clad in ancient armor. These men wore red loincloths and carried swords and spears as if they had stepped out of a distant past. Amid the eerie, continuous gong sounds, the entire group fell into a tense silence, overwhelmed by fear. The flashlight beams followed the mysterious procession as it moved past, revealing that the figures were unnaturally tall, standing about 2 meters high. Suddenly, a loud voice, a combination of male and female tones, boomed from the palanquin, scolding the group in a thunderous tone. "Get out of my way! Leave this place!" The voice shook everyone to their core. Even the armed guards, who should have been prepared for any danger, were paralyzed with fear. At that moment, the forest grew eerily silent. The usual background noise of insects and the sound of the waterfall had completely ceased, leaving only the thumping of their racing hearts. All they could do was sit in frozen terror as the ghostly procession continued its slow advance. It took about 15 minutes for the procession to move from the waterfall on the left to the cliff on the right, which was shrouded in dense mist. Then, the figures disappeared into the fog, swallowed by the darkness. The incident left everyone shaken, unable to return to sleep. Instead, they gathered together, whispering among themselves, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" When dawn finally broke, bathing the forest in sunlight, the group busied themselves preparing breakfast, but the tense atmosphere remained palpable. Matt eventually approached one of the guards, saying, "Sir, I don't think I can eat right now. Can we just leave this place?" The guard, equally exhausted and unnerved, nodded in agreement, replying, "Yeah, I can't eat either. Let's just get out of here." Before leaving, Matt and a group of about 12 guards decided to investigate the cliff area. They found no path to continue, but the unsettling experience was far from over. The journey ahead still held many mysteries. As the expedition progressed, they eventually reached a place known as the Airplane Crash Cliff and continued onward to their final destination. It was there, at the end of their journey, that they discovered an ancient stone temple, an extraordinary structure that had never been documented on any map. Upon entering the grounds of this mysterious temple, the group encountered intricate carvings on the back walls of the structure. These carvings depicted scenes that were shockingly similar to the ghostly procession they had witnessed on the third night. Every detail, from the figure's attire to the woman on the palanquin, was meticulously etched in stone. The discovery left them awestruck and unnerved. Additionally, the temple housed numerous statues of deities, further emphasizing its sacred and enigmatic nature. The team meticulously recorded every detail of the temple, taking rubbings, photographs, and precise measurements to document the site for submission to the Fine Arts Department. They decided to camp at the temple to ensure they could gather all necessary data before returning. This marked the conclusion of their expedition, which ended successfully and with a sense of fulfillment. However, fate seemed to have other plans for Matt. Sometime later, another expedition was organized to revisit the same coordinates using the exact same route. This new group camped at the same location where Matt and his team had stayed on the third night. However, this time, they encountered no strange phenomena. When they reached the site of the ancient temple on the 15th day, they were met not with the majestic structure Matt had described, but with ruins, crumbled remains that barely reached knee height. To make matters worse, all the detailed records and evidence from Matt's original expedition were destroyed in a fire on the very day the second group set out to verify the findings. It was as if the temple had vanished from existence, leaving no trace behind and taking with it any proof that it had ever stood tall in that remote forest. To this day, the route that Matt and his team explored remains inaccessible to the public. The ruins, which span an area of over 800 meters, are recorded only in the database of the Fine Arts Department. However, this story has never been officially disclosed, and everything that happened remains shrouded in mystery. The stone temple, which once stood proudly in the heart of the forest, continues to be hidden in the secrecy of the deep jungle. After hearing Matt's story, I personally see it as more than just a tale of the forest's mysteries. It serves as a lesson that highlights the importance of preserving and respecting cultural heritage, whether it be a sacred footprint of the Buddha or an enigmatic stone temple discovered in the wilderness. These are the foundations that reflect our long history. I also firmly believe that the legends and taboos surrounding the forest's supernatural elements are more beneficial than harmful. However, this is merely my personal opinion. In any case, if you've made it to the end of the story, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments section below.